to my YouTube channel, Sewing in Switzerland. Today we are going to be making the Tilly and the Buttons Stevie top with the necktie closure. So just a couple of notes on sizing before we get straight into it. So I have made the size 16 here, and which is the size that I normally wear. And as you can tell, I do have a lot of baggy here, so I do recommend sizing down. Obviously if you've got a naturally much larger bust, I mean I do have a large bust, but it is quite baggy here, so I do recommend sizing down for this one. But again, just double check your measurements on the finished garment measurements, but that would be my advice. So today let's get straight into it. I'm not a huge fan of long intros, as you all know, so we're just going to get straight into the sew along. And I would very much love it if you enjoyed this tutorial. If you could please leave a comment, let me know how you found it. I'm very interested in feedback and very grateful for any feedback that anybody has. And we are now joined by Princess. Hello. So yes, and also I would very much like it if you would subscribe to the channel. That would make me very happy. Thank you. I'll see you soon, and let's make a top. Yay! Okay, so let's get straight into it. The first thing that we're going to do is actually the second step in the booklet, but I like to have all my pieces kind of ready, lined up, good to go, and then we don't have to faff around. So the first step we're going to be doing is interfacing the pieces for the neck facing. Okay, so you want to lay it out in exactly the same way that I have. So the right side is underneath, okay, because we're going to put the interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. And with interfacing, remember that you always want the abrasive side, so the side with the bumps. If you just feel it, you can tell one is very smooth and one has little bumps on it. The bumpy side is the side that goes face down on the fabric, yeah. And the soft, smooth side is the side that faces upwards, okay? Because the abrasive side is the glue side, just in case. I mean, I've done it so many times where I've put a hot iron on top of the interfacing, and then it turns out that I've stuck the glue side to the iron, and you get in such a pickle, and it takes ages to clean off the iron. And so yeah, just double check that you've got the sticky side on the bottom, so the sticky side facing down onto the fabric. And then you want to lay out your pieces like this. So it kind of looks like a toilet bowl. And if you've got this toilet bowl shape, then you've done it right. Okay, so you really want that shape. You don't want these pieces to be facing outwards. You want this exact circular shape here. And so then go ahead and lay your interfacing on top. And then I just use a tea towel. I do not recommend putting the iron directly onto the interfacing and then pressing. Cover it with something. So normally, excuse me, normally I use a tea towel or just kind of a not too thick but not too thin type of fabric. Just kind of a thick piece of cotton would do, like a tea towel or something would be perfect. And then just lay that over the top on your ironing board. And then just press that, but don't like move the iron around, just kind of hold it in one place for like a few seconds, lift, hold it in another place for a few seconds, and so on until it's all stuck down. And then we are going to do the stay stitching on the necklines. So for the stay stitching, what we want is our front piece, which looks like this. The front piece is a one piece, okay, the back piece is in two kind of smaller pieces that go across the top of the back there. So the front piece is the piece that is the biggest piece that is in one piece, so to speak. And I've purposely not pressed this yet so that I could show you, because we've got this great middle fold line here that I've got. So with stay stitching the neckline, what you're going to want to do is stitch halfway. and then that would be one stitch, and then a second stitch like that. So we're going to stitch very close to the edge. It's going to be 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're just going to run a normal running stitch. If your fabric is particularly stretchy, I mean, we're using a woven, but if you do have a bit of a stretch in that, or it's a bit kind of loosey-goosey, you can shorten your stitch length to about 1.5, and that will just, that extra tight stitch will help hold that in place. So it's really just to stop the lovely shape of the neckline pulling out of place as we're working on the top, and then you won't kind of get a horrible gaping neck, or it won't be skewed or anything like that. So it's a definite step not to skip. So 3/8 of an inch just down here, and we're going to stitch to this center line here, and then we're going to stop, and then you're just going to back stitch and flip to the other side and then stitch inwards. And instead of stitching up and out, you're going to stitch in. So you're going to start at this corner, stitch in, back stitch, stop at the middle, then start at the other corner, stitch inwards, back stitch, stop at the middle. Okay, so then let's stay stitch the back pieces as well. And it's the exact same process for the back pieces here as it is for the front piece, but it's broken in that middle line. So that line that we had in the last piece, we actually have it cut in the back piece. You'll have to excuse my croaky voice, I'm so sorry. I was at a jazz show last night, and my throat is a little bit on the croaky side today. So for the back piece, again, 3mm, just 3mm of an inch away from the seam edge there, all the way around, straight off the end. There we go, on both sides. And that'll be our stay stitching. And then once we've got that done and the interfacing done and adhered, we can meet back here and start stitching the back yoke pieces, which is very exciting. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, and I just wanted to show you really quickly the stay stitching, so you've got a real visual representation here. So hopefully you can see here, right in the middle here, we have that gap between the stitches, and that's where we've sewn into the middle, and then right up to the end, to the middle fold line there, but not crossing over. Okay, so now we're going to take our front piece, the piece we've got here, and we're going to attach the back yoke pieces. So that's the two separate back pieces that we've got and stay stitched. Okay, so you want this piece to be right side up, so the right side facing towards you. Okay, and then we're going to get the back yoke piece with the right side facing down, so that they're right sides together. And we're going to line up that neckline that we've stay stitched here, remembering right sides together. And we're just going to pop it along here, and then we're just going to pop some pins in here just to secure that. And we're going to do this on both sides. And you do actually, when you cut out the fabric, you have a little notch here, so they should line up. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with the other side. So again, right side down, wrong side facing up. Just going to lay that on top. And these back pieces will cross over each other. That's fine. That's normal. So you can see we've got a bit of an overlay there. That's okay. So we're just going to pin all the way along, and then we're going to take this to the machine. There we go. We're going to take this to the machine, and we're going to stitch 5/8 of an inch, okay, along those top edges there. 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're going to finish the seams. And you can either use an overlocker or pinking shears. If you use pinking shears, you're going to want to then press it open, press that seam open afterwards. Otherwise, we're going to push and press the seam towards the back if you've overlocked it and you've got that one seam instead of 2 open pieces. Okay, so we'll take that to the machine. Remember, 5/8 of an inch across both sides, and then we'll finish the seams and we'll meet back up here. Okay, so I have stitched the seam allowance with our 5/8 and I've gone ahead and finished that. So I just want to show you what that should look like. So we've got that stitched and then finished, and I'm just going to press that down now so that it's towards this back piece, this separate back piece. So if we open it up, you should have, and imagine that I've pressed the seams, you should have this lovely scooped shape here. There we go, like that. So it's looking good. So that's what it should look like. And now we're just going to cast that aside and we're going to move on to the necktie closure at the back now. So you need to get the 2 necktie panels that you have cut out of your fabric, and let's proceed with that next step. Exciting. This is a very quick sew, by the way, so it shouldn't take too long. It's not very complex at all. It's perfect for beginners. So yeah, so this is a good quick summer top if you're looking for something light and breezy. Okay, so we're here with our neckties. We've got 2 neckties here, so 2 pieces of fabric, and we've got them right side facing up. So the right side is facing up towards you. Okay, so we're just gonna very, very simply fold that over, so fold it into itself. So you just take the bottom piece of the fabric and just fold it up so it's like half the width, but you don't lose any of that lovely length there. Okay, so then just go ahead and press that down so that seam, that line there, is nice and crisp, and it's not going to fold out of place or anything. And then we're just going to pin all the way along. So I'll just show you very quickly. All the way along here. And once it's pressed, it shouldn't like flap open or, you know, lose its shape there at all. So here we go. So what we're going to do then is, and do press it first, is go to the machine and we're going to stitch along one side here. So just along there with our 5/8 of a inch seam allowance. So along there, and then we're going to pivot and we're going to come down here again with our 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're just going to come off the end. So you're only stitching one end closed. Okay, so only one of these will have a line of stitching and one will be left, because that's the piece that we're going to open to turn it inside out, so that's the right side out. So 5/8 of a seam allowance along here, and then with the machine just pop the needle down, pivot it and come all the way down here, and then we'll meet back up here with our pieces and I'll show you how that should look and the next steps for that. So here we are with our straps, and we're making the necktie straps here, not the hook and the button closure. So we're going to need both of our straps, so the 2 pieces, and you want them right sides facing upwards, so the wrong side is on the bottom. And then we're just going to fold it in the middle here, so it is half the width, just like that. So you can see this one is half the size of this one, half the width. And then we're just going to give it a press like this, just so it keeps its shape. And there we go. I'll leave this one open so you can see the difference. And then we're just going to stick a couple of pins in just to hold it in place. So you can see it's pretty even. You want to make sure that your edges line up. Okay, just a couple of pins should do it. The iron should hold it. Okay, so here we have the next strap here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the machine and we're going to, with our 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, we are just going to stitch along here, and then we're going to lower the needle and pivot the fabric, and then we're going to go all the way down here and then off the end. So we're only stitching down one of the short ends, so just down one, and then this one will be left open so that we can turn it out. Okay, so I'll take it to the machine, I'll do that, and then I'll come back and I'll show you so you've got like a visual representation there. Perfect, see you in a second. Okay, so I'm back from the machine and I'll just show you. So you can see I've stitched inside and then pivoted to go down the long edge there, and then straight off the end. So you can see we've got this gap here. So I've done it with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, but that said, if you have problems with your fine motor skills and you're tying it up yourself, I would actually make the strap a bit bigger. So I would reduce the seam allowance to maybe 1/2 an inch so that you just get a little bit extra of a chunkier tie there, and then that'll just make it much easier to grip and to handle if you're tying it either alone or your hands just need a little extra assistance. So I would actually make the strap thicker if that's something that you need. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to cut off that extra seam allowance. So that point here where we have pivoted and we've got that lovely angle, we're just going to cut diagonally just to make that angle really sharp there. But don't cut too close to the stitching. You do not want to cut into the stitching. And then we're just going to chop off that seam allowance, and that's just going to help us when it comes to turning it. So we're just going to, not too close, but it does reduce that all that extra bulk. Just be careful that you don't snip into those stitches. I've done it before and I'll do it again. Okay, lovely. So what we're going to do now is we've got our inside out strap. So we now need to turn it with the end that we left open right side out. So and this is so fiddly. Honestly, I'll see you all in about 3 days. It takes forever to turn out. So you can literally just fold the ends over and then just kind of shimmy it through. Just kind of easing it through and turning it right sides out, but it does take a long time. There are tools that you can buy to help, and I have actually seen people use crochet hooks, knitting needles, and they kind of push it through all the way to the end and then kind of use the hook to like pull it through. You can also get from the sewing accessory companies like Clover and Prim, they do these things called loop turners, where you just push them in and then they hook on and they turn it right side out really, really quickly. So I do recommend them. Or you can just, you know, struggle along like me and turn them right side out. So, okay, we'll meet back here in about 3 days when we've turned our sides out, our ties out, and then we'll meet back here to press them. Okay, so after some tears, a bit of sweating, a lot of swearing, our ties are the right side out. So you just want to get your seam line there, and you just kind of want to push it flat with your fingers, just so it lines up in a straight line and it's not wibbly wobbly. Lovely. And then you're just going to lay it flat and give it a quick press. There we go. Okay, so this next step is optional, but what you can do is top stitch the edges. So you can just, like we did before, do a line across there, lower the needle, pivot the fabric and run all the way down here, just a quick top stitch, and that will just keep that all real, that kind of seam inside all really secure and flat. But it's optional. I'm going to skip it. My fabric isn't particularly loosey-goosey. It's quite heavy and stable, so I'm just going to leave it. So we're going to press the other one, and then we're going to grab our shirt, our front shirt piece with our back yoke attached, and then the next step will be attaching these neckties. Okay, so we've got our front bodice piece. That's this piece here at the angle. And then here we've got the back bodice yoke that we attached earlier. So you can see here we've got, I'll just zoom in. We've got our stay stitching that we did here on both pieces. So we've got that lovely kind of curved neckline that's kind of looking a little nonsensical at the moment. So what we're going to need is the raw edge here that runs alongside here. Okay, so you've got the neckline, and then you're just going to move to the short edge that runs along here. So you can see this is the back yoke. Okay, and then what we're looking for is 2 notches that we made. Let me zoom in. 2 notches that we made in the, there we go, in the fabric when we were cutting out the pattern. So these 2 notches are where this necktie is going to lie. So you want your necktie to be inside. So not like that, not like this for instance, but like this. So you want your right side of the back bodice yoke piece facing upwards, facing towards you, the right side towards you. So we're looking at the right side here. And I've lost my pins. Okay, good. So the 2 notch holes there that we made, the notch markings, and we're just going to line up our necktie in between those 2 notches that we marked when we cut out our fabric. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pop a pin here. I have no idea where I've put the pins. I've actually almost dunked the necktie in my coffee cup at least 3 times. So do be careful if you're drinking coffee nearby. So the necktie lines up between those notches. Then we're going to pin it with our invisible pin right now. And we're just going to stitch that down just here, just over this necktie here, with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just a lovely, it's just a basting stitch really to keep it in place before we attach everything else, like the facing for instance. So we're just going to 3/8 of an inch, secure that down, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll have our neckties. And then it's really beginning to actually look like a top, to be honest. It comes together super quickly. It's a really good one. So I will see you back here after you've done the 3/8 of an inch necktie attachment. And just to clarify super quickly, that's the raw edge of the necktie that you're lining up with the back yoke piece there. The raw edge against raw edge. So your nice enclosed turned out edge is away. We're not doing anything with that now. It's just the raw edge with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, okay? So once it is basted, I say basted, but I've just used the standard running stitch and that's absolutely fine. You don't need to use a longer stitch. You can just use a normal running stitch with no problems, and trust me, I've made it several times. It's fine. No problems whatsoever. So this is the necktie with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance there. So it should just look like that. And this is the right side of the fabric. This is the wrong side of the fabric. Okay, so when we come to close it, it will, with the facing, it will look like that. Okay, so we're going to put this aside now, and we're going to grab our back neckline facings that we made earlier with the interfacing. So we'll need all 3 pieces for this next step. Okay, so we're here with all of our facings. I've got slight bubbling on this one from the interfacing, but it's fine. It's fine. It's no problem. It's not going to change the outcome. It's all cool. So we've got the front neckline facing here, which is that lovely U shape, and then we've got the back facings here. So you want it to look exactly like what I'm doing here. So the front facing, facing upwards, so right side's up, and then the back with the right side down. Okay, and then we're going to overlay this edge along this edge here. So I'll just show that to you now. So you want it to look exactly how mine looks, essentially. And then you'll know that it's the correct way round. So we'll just pop a pin in there. And it is slightly angled, so don't worry. When you look at it and it kind of looks like it's not sitting straight, it's not, and that's totally fine. And then again on this side, just line up those edges, stick a pin in it. No, that's not even. Careful it doesn't move around if you've got a particularly floaty fabric, like a viscose or something with a little bit of shine to it, maybe might slip a little. And then that one. Lovely. So then you've got this kind of weird U shape almost. Y shape, sorry. YMCA. What we're going to do now, I've distracted myself, is we're going to stitch along these top edges here, just these top edges, and that's it. So with our 5/8 of an inch, we're going to go across here, I'm going to go across here, and then we will meet back here for the next step. Okay, so I've stitched them together, and now what we're going to do is, I don't know why that made a ripping sound, that's a bit concerning. We're just going to press open the seam allowances on both sides there, and no need to trim them down at all. It says just press them open, so, which is what I normally do. There's not normally a lot of bulk with it, so it's absolutely fine. So we're just going to press them down, and the reason why I wanted to do this on camera was just to caution you to be super careful, because we've got both sides of interfacing here, and I cannot even begin to tell you the amount of times that I've pressed this open and just kind of slammed the iron on top and then melted all of the interfacing. So just be super careful that you're only catching that with the tip of the iron there, because we do not want to melt the interfacing, not because it's really damaging to the garment. If you have a bit of melted interfacing, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it too much, but it is such a nightmare to clean off the iron, the glue. It's a real pain, so just be super careful when you're pressing the interfacing there. Lovely. So I'm just going to flip it because I'm going to show you what we're doing next. So I always think at this stage it looks like a cartoon head outline, you know, like this is the hair, then we could have like a smiley face in here or something. Please tell me I'm not the only one who sees that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to finish the outside seam edge only. So, which is why I wanted to show you so you could see what side that is. So if you're planning on using an overlocker and you're not quite sure which one you're doing, just pop a pin in the outside seam edge here. So we're gonna do our overlocking stitch all the way around the outside, not the inside, not here, and not here, okay? Literally just this outside silhouette here. If you're not using an overlocker, go ahead and use your pinking shears, just to, again, in exactly the same way on the outside there, and then we'll meet back up here where we're going to attach it to the bodice. Okay, lovely. So we've gone ahead and just overlocked that outside edge, or pinking sheared that outside edge, and you've pressed the seam allowance open, and we're looking really lovely and hunky-dory with that. And my dog is yawning in the background. So we've now got the bodice laid out, as you can see. Now this is right side facing up, so you've got your lovely neckties here on that back yoke piece. So here's the back yoke piece, here's the back yoke piece, and here is the front bodice. Okay, and what we're going to do is attach this lovely lining, this facing, sorry, that we've just made to this whole neckline section. Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, right side up, and then with the facing right side down, so that they are right sides together, we're just going to overlay our facing on top like that. Okay, now it kind of looks like a person with like hair barrettes or hair clips. Please tell me that you can see this and I'm not just slowly going a little bit mad in the heat in the sewing room. So now we're going to pin it. So firstly, okay, the very first thing we're going to do is make sure that the neckties are laying flush against that back yoke. We do not want that to get caught up in the sewing, for instance. So we're going to just lay that nice and flush against it and pop a pin in it. And you might actually want to pop a pin, there we go, over here somewhere where we will not be sewing, but just to secure that. I'll pop one in so you can see what I'm talking about. Just to secure that necktie out of the way. So you want to make sure that it's not bunched up here, because the last thing you want to do is go through all this and then find out you've stitched your necktie and it's all gone awry. So then we're going to stitch, pin this corner in the exact same way. So we've got our necktie lying nice and flush there. So pop a pin in it. And then we're just going to come round to the seam edge bit where we press that seam open. You're just going to make that really line it up nice and then pop a pin there. Lovely. And then there we go. We want to be careful that we're not like pulling that or manipulating that. Really, we don't want that to stretch out. I know we've got our stay stitching, but just be a little bit aware of that. And then we're going to pop our pin there, and again just double check that your necktie is not in the way. And then we're going to do the same thing over on this side. So I'm just going to unpin that so I can line this up nice, and then pop your pin here. Lovely. And you know, if your seams aren't lining up perfectly, you know, if you're trying to get that back yoke seam line and the seam line from the facing here to line up super perfectly, don't worry too much about it, because we're going to be folding this onto the inside, so you actually won't be able to see that you've got that seam line along there anyway. So then for the neck piece, I'm just going to pull that, so you can see I just pulled that a little bit wider. And then we're just going to work inwards into that U shape, just to make sure then that it's all lying nice and flush. And that's the best way to do it, to start on this corner here on the outside, then do your seam line and then work into that U. Otherwise, you can find that it does kind of go a little bit AWOL and doesn't lie flat. So again, you just want to make sure that you're smoothing that as you go. And honestly, this is the trickiest bit. It's all downhill from here, friends. Lovely. And then we're just going to finish that off by sticking a few pins in along this bottom edge here, all the way down. Just check you can see that on camera, and I've not gone off camera. Lovely jubbly. The same down here. Just pop your pins in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to stitch from one edge all the way up and all the way around here. So if you are a bit wary of sewing on a curve, what you can do is stitch with your 5/8 seam allowance along here, and then before you get to that corner, just lower the needle and pivot the fabric, okay, so that you're moving it towards you, so that the fabric is moving but the needle is not, because you've lowered the needle, and then just work it around in that round there. Okay, so we will meet back up here. So we're going, just to clarify, we're going all the way around. So we're starting at this edge, going all the way on this curve here and down here and off the end, okay, and then we'll meet up once we've stitched that together. Okay, so let's take a quick look at how that turned out. So you can see along the stitch line here, it's looking pretty good. And this is what I mean by stitch up the side, drop the needle and then pivot, so that you can go all the way around there. And you know, it is quite tricky to do this on a machine, to get the curves on a machine looking quite flush. So if you are new to sewing, or you want to refresh any of your sewing skills, pop a comment in the box or message me on Instagram, and I will send you some sewing drills so you can practice sewing on the curve there, if that's something that you would like to do, or if you're just finding it a little bit uncomfortable, then please reach out. It is no trouble whatsoever. So I want these videos and sewing in general to be as accessible as possible for everyone. So I really don't mind if someone comments or someone messages and says, hey, help me. It's absolutely no trouble whatsoever. So let's have a look. The next step is trimming the seam allowance. So we just want to maybe half it, because we are going to be understitching. So don't kind of get snip happy and take off a lot. You just want to maybe just half that is a pretty good amount. And also, if you are sewing with like a bulky or a really thick fabric, I recommend grading the seams. And basically all that means is you cut one side of the seam here. I'll just do it so you can see. So you only cut one of them. So where I've just snipped straight up there, you would do that exactly the same, but only on one side. And it's just to reduce bulk. And so if you ever see something that says grading the seam, that's what it means. It means that you just snip one side of your seam allowance so that it's shorter than the other. Sometimes I find, you know, the language and the sewing lingo can be more difficult than the actual activity itself. So again, if I ever use any terms and I haven't explained it, or you're not following, just let me know and I'll clarify what it means. It's no problem whatsoever. So just be careful as you're snipping around that you don't catch the fabric from the bodice and then cut a hole in the front bodice. because you'll end up looking like Regina George out of Mean Girls. Please tell me someone's seen that film. Or am I showing my age? Okay, and then we're just going to snip a little bit down here. Again, we don't want to go too narrow. Okay, lovely. So, there we go. We've like roughly halved it. And then you're going to grab your scissors. And in this lovely V-neck, we want it to be able to lie like flush to your chest, flush just under your neck. So we want to cut like little snips, basically. And by snips, I don't mean a V shape. We're not cutting a V shape with the scissors here. We don't want that neckline to stretch. We don't want to give it any more room to maneuver, so to speak. So instead, we're just doing straight down stitches. So I'll just, here we go, zoom in. There we go. It's just snips, just little snips. Be careful that you don't snip through the stitching. And not like super close together, but not like super narrow. Just a centimetre or so in between. Just gonna go all the way around. And that just helps it position itself, really. I love that sound that the scissors make, that snip sound. There we go. So we don't need to go down the sides, just in that lovely curvy bit there. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we are going to press the facing away from the bodice. So go ahead and open it up and just gently pull. Don't like give it a yank. We're not trying to stretch it out. So you can see I've not even managed to bother matching them up, because that's going to fold to the inside and you're not actually even going to be able to see. So with seams like that, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so what we're going to do now, sorry, I've had to angle myself and stuck my foot in the camera. So the corners where we've got our lovely little neckties, we're just going to give them a little poke. Be good to grab like a knitting needle or crochet hook and just kind of push those edges through there. Or a chopstick, anything you've kind of got available to you. You can actually, oh, I've seen them on the internet. You can pay a lot of money for these, like, I don't know what we call them, stabbing tools, basically, where you push the corners out. And they're basically just chopsticks. So I recommend just getting some chopsticks, to be honest. Okay, so there we go. So that's what that should look like. So when we're pressing now, I'm just going to turn out the other side quickly. When we're pressing, we're not going to be able to press deep into that corner. We're not going to be able to stitch deep into that corner because we're going to understitch once we've pressed. So don't worry too much about the corners yet. Okay, lovely. So you can see, here we go. Folded that, I've pulled that away from the bodice. So this is the bodice section here, and this is the facing. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to press your stitches up, your seam allowance, press your seam allowance up towards the facing. So I'll just turn it this way. So we're going to push that up and then press that so it's nice and flush against the seam, against the facing. And then what we're going to do is take it to the machine and we're just going to stitch along here. So just going to understitch this seam to the facing there. Okay, but we'll press it first and then talk about the understitch. So I've gone ahead and pressed that. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch this seam that we've got here, the seam allowance. We're going to stitch that to the facing. So we're just going to stitch between this stitch line and the edge here of the seam. So we're going to go straight up the middle, and you can see we can get maybe about here, and then we won't be able to stitch anymore. You won't be able to go the whole way around because of that corner necktie. So go as far as you can and then just backstitch off, and then do the same along here. So seam towards the facing. I did press it, honestly. And then just stitch. You can kind of just follow that original guideline we made for the stay stitching. So you can just follow that along, so that edge to the facing there. And then we'll meet back up here, and then just go all the way around the neck, sorry. And then again, you'll have the same problem at the other end. So just backstitch off, and then go up this side, and then backstitch somewhere around here. So just get as close as you can, but don't worry about it too much. And then we'll meet back here for the exciting bit where we turn it inside. Okay, so I'm just back from the machine, having understitched that, and then I folded the facing into the wrong side. So you can see we've got the overlock stitches there. So it was like this, and I've just literally folded it inside. I haven't pressed it or anything yet. So just having a look. Do you know what? That was actually quite tricky. So if you are a beginner and you're following this and you're getting in a bit of a pickle with the understitching, and it's making you want to cry, or it's really stressing you out, just can it. Just don't worry about the understitching. We can get by. It will not alter the effect of the garment if you do not understitch this. You will have the same outcome as everybody else who's making this without the understitching. It's not imperative to the pattern. So if it is really stressing you out, and it is a bit fiddly, to be perfectly honest, then yeah, skip it and don't worry about it. Just move on and don't let it get you down. So you can see here where I could only understitch so far, so that corner is free of stitching. So yeah, you know, give it a go, and then if it's not working, don't worry about it. So we're gonna now fold that into the wrong side. So I'm just gonna lay it flat. Here we go. And I'll trim the threads in a sec from the understitching as well. I left them so you could kind of see quite clearly where I had and had not stitched. So lovely. So what we're going to do is we're going to press this facing nice and flat now. Nice and flush to the inside. Okay, so we're just going to go around it with the iron, just kind of making that sit nice. And then we will meet back here once we've pressed. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pressed that facing down to the inside now. So it's looking nice and flush from the front here. So lovely. Now what we're going to do is stitch the facing. Gosh, I nearly knocked the camera off. Stitch the facing down. Okay, so what I would suggest doing here, because it says on the instructions, stitch 1/4 inch from the back edge piece of the facing. I would just follow your finishing stitches with the sewing machine needle. So go ahead and pin your facing down now to the inside like how we've just pressed it. And then I would just stitch along that finished stitch. Okay, so we will be able to see the stitching from the right side. So be careful with your stitching that nothing kind of is getting caught on the right side. But, you know, if it is, it's not the end of the world. We can always unpick any stitching and then go over it again. So don't worry, it's all cool. Everything is fixable. So I've got a bit of a crease here, so I'm just going to go repress that and then stitch along that facing. So we'll meet back here after I've been to the machine, and then I will show you how that will look on the right side of the fabric. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done the top stitching all the way around. So this is the right side that we're looking at now. So you can see the stitching, so just be aware of that. Do you know what? I wish I'd used actually like a novelty stitch. I think that would have looked really nice. So let's just have a quick Scooby on the inside. So you can see the stitch that I've done. I've just stitched over the overlocking stitch, and then that way I could track it so that it looks super neat and cohesive on the right side. So I really recommend doing that. So now what we're going to move on to doing is the back piece, which is really exciting. So I just want you to flip your piece, your bodice, so that it's wrong side up, okay? And we're just going to fold. You see where I've got this kind of, just turn the camera slightly, well, we've got this shape for the sleeve, this kind of curved edge here. So that's where, there we go, you see, that's where the back bodice piece will lie on top. So just fold that down at the top edge there. And again on this side, let's move the iron out of the way, that would help. Cool, so just fold your neckties back and then line them up next to each other. And the purpose of this is basically to check that they're the same length, because we want it to look like that. Oh, I'll zoom in. Goodness. So you can see where this back yoke piece lines up with this back yoke piece, and you want them to be the same length. We don't want one kind of down here, because that would just look ridiculous. So if you do have a piece that's gone awry and is much longer, trim it off, just cut off the excess so that they are the same length. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab, I'll zoom back out, our back bodice piece. Okay, so lovely. And then we're going to fold it in half. So I've already done that. And we've got this middle fold line here. And then we're going to grab a piece of scissors, a pair of scissors, and snip a knot with a tiny, tiny knot in the fabric there, right in that middle fold line. Okay. Okay, moving on. So lay your back piece on the floor. Just going to move our makeshift ironing situation. If you've not seen my other videos, just to fill you in, my ironing board has gone missing. It's a really long story. Well, it's not actually, it's just gone missing. It's ridiculous. So here is the back bodice and the notch in the middle that we just made. So this is right side facing up. Oh, bit of fluff. Yeah, right side facing up. So right side towards you. And then we're going to grab our bodice that we just had a minute ago with the neckties and the back yoke. And we are going to line up. I just turn it upside down here. So we're just going to line up so that it looks like this. So just bear with me a second. So you want to turn it upside down so that you have the bottom edge of the back yoke piece at the top. That is going to be the piece that we are attaching to the top of the back piece. Okay, so I'll lay it out and then you'll be able to see. We basically want them to look exactly the same as what I'm doing here. So just bear with me and then copy it so that yours lines up and looks like this. So here we go, fold them back. So you can see there we've got the neckties. So you want the neckties at the bottom, essentially facing towards you. Okay, so you want this kind of your toilet bowl shape again, with the long straight bit of the overlocking stitches on the facing towards the edge. Okay, so the very edge of the back yoke piece is the piece that attaches to the back piece there. So we want right sides together. So you have the back piece bodice is right side up, and this front bodice with the back yoke and the facing here is right side down, so that the right sides are sandwiched in the middle together. Okay, now you just want to check that notch that you made lines up with the middle of the back yoke pieces here. So that's looking good. And there are actually a couple of notches along the fabric, so you can check that you're lining it up correctly. And then we're just going to pop I think I need a coffee. Pop a couple of pins in all the way along here. So it's looking really good. And then again, the same on this side. It is like getting quite thick now because we've got about three layers of fabric there, so just be mindful of that with the machine. And again, if this isn't like clear to you, let me know in the comments or drop me a message, because I would really like to know what you think of this, because I am doing these for your benefit. So if there's something that you're thinking, no, that doesn't make any sense, then do feel free to reach out. It's no problem whatsoever. So what we're going to do now is stitch the whole way along here. So we're creating this open piece here, and we're turning it into one piece because we're stitching across that. It's going to be secure, completely secure. So with your 5/8 of an inch stitch allowance, go the whole way along, and then we will meet back here. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, and I've also gone ahead and overlocked and finished the top of that stitch as well. So if you are using an overlocker or pinking shears, go ahead and do that next. So you can see it's looking pretty good. It's kind of looking like a halter top actually, but it's looking pretty nice. It's looking good from the right side as well. What we're going to do now is go ahead and press that seam towards this back piece that we've got now, that we've just attached, and then you're going to edge stitch, gosh, I do need a coffee, edge stitch along that seam there, just in between that stitch line and the finished edge, and that will basically give this nice finish. You will be able to see that from the right side, by the way, so bear that in mind. If you wanted to do it from the right side, you could just sit very, very slightly to the left of that seam line there and just go like follow that down parallel, and that basically just secures that seam to the back piece there, stops it kind of bunching up, flapping around. Especially, I would recommend doing this one, not skipping this one, especially if you have any sensory issues with your clothing, because if you ignore that one, it will rise up and rub against your back, which won't necessarily feel very nice, especially if you are sensitive to sensory issues with your clothes. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll meet back here, and then we're attaching the back and the front together, and then it's really going to look like a top, which is super exciting. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, so I'll just show you really quickly what the edge stitching, I don't know why I'm really struggling with that word, edge stitching looks like. So you can see here we've got the facing with the necktie, so we just come down and along that back piece there. So it's looking pretty good. So now is the fun part. Okay, so you want to go ahead and turn it inside out so that the right sides are inside in the middle facing each other. let's just get that lying nice and flush against each other. Lovely. So you can see we've got this great side seam here. So we're just going to pin all the way along here. There are some notches that you can use as guidelines just to check that you're in the right ballpark. But don't forget, you have got 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So always think with those big seam allowances, you've got like a little bit of extra room to maneuver, a little extra wiggle room for any slight misadjustments. So looking good. Okay, so I'm gonna pin the other side in a sec. What we are going to do is take this to the machine, and starting on this sleeve corner here, so where we've got that curve, we're going to stitch around that curve and straight down with our 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Oh goodness, I've got dog fluff stuck to everything. So then what we're going to do is, once we've stitched that with our 5/8 of an inch, before we finish the seams, just grab the top piece here where you've got that curve, and like we did before with the neck facing, just with your scissors add a little snip or two along that curve there, and that'll just give that a little bit of extra like wiggle room. And then finish your seam with either your overlocking stitch or your pinking shears, or your chosen finishing method of choice. So 5/8 of an inch, a little snip on the corner here, and then finish on both sides, and then we'll meet back here. Okay my friends, so I have stitched the side seams together, gone ahead and finished the seams there on the inside, and turned it right side out, and she is looking good. So you can see there we've got our neckties all secure. We're actually on the final stages now. So now for the hemming. So what I have gone and done, I've deviated ever so slightly. I've gone ahead and finished the seams on both of the edges on both sleeves and also the bottom here. Okay, so first things first, go ahead and do that. Finish the bottom and both sleeves, and then on the sleeves do an additional running stitch just along, and I've done this one at 1/2 inch, which is a little bit deeper than what they recommend in the booklet to do, because I like the hem to sit in just a little bit further on the sleeves. Otherwise it has a tendency to poke out and it can be a little bit uncomfortable. So I do recommend doing a 1/2 inch hem on the sleeves, and it honestly, it won't make any difference at all. Oh, bless you, we've got a sneezing pug in the background. So once you've done that and you've done your running stitch of 1/2 inch there, and we're just going to use this running stitch as our guideline. So then we're going to fold that inside and press that, and then we're going to go back to the machine and just stitch it down. So that actual stitch that we've made, there we go, will not be visible from the outside, but it will give you a really nice clean finish on the hem. And the same on the bottom here. So I've gone ahead and finished the edges on the bottom hem, and then I've done a 5/8 of an inch running stitch, just 5/8 of an inch from the very edge there. And then we will fold that under, and that extra like weight from the seam will hold that hem in place, and it makes it so much easier to do the hemming. Honestly, trust me on this one. Also, it acts as a really great guideline, so you get really straight hems every time, which can be a bit of a nightmare because for some reason hems always seem to go wonky, and I don't know why, it's a curse. So I really recommend doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and press that, and then I'm going to stitch those hems down. and then we will meet back up. And congratulations, you have just made your Tilly and the Buttons Stevie top. Well done, I am extremely proud of you. I hope you enjoyed the sew along. I hope you enjoyed making the top actually, and like I said throughout the tutorial, if you did have any problems or found, you know, a couple of areas a bit tricky, do comment and I will come back to you and either send you like a drill, a sewing drill for practice, or we can just kind of hash out any of the bits you found tricky. There's no problem at all, so do leave a comment or find me on social media, and have a great day, and thank you for joining me on our sewing adventure, and the pugs of course, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks, bye.